So, for those of you who have not seen the film, I just want to give you a content warning. There will be spoilers. So, if you've not seen the film, I suggest that you find it on Amazon Prime, Publish or Perish by David Liban, 2023. Watch it and then give me a listen. Or if you don't mind spoilers, go ahead and give this a listen, and then when you watch the movie, uh, pipe in the comments and tell me what you think. I just do want to let you know there are spoilers. You will know everything about the movie that's important to know about the movie, which doesn't mean that you won't have a really good experience watching the movie though. So I really hope everybody will check it out. Publish or Perish, David Liban, 2023. And so now let's just settle in and listen to what I have to say about it. Now, also, there's no footage from the film because I am still learning about copyright. I don't want to do anything that could harm my very newborn channel. So listen to it as if you're listening to a podcast, but I do give you a little bit of a Halloween spooky background to look at. So, yeah, enjoy. Publish or Perish is the title of David Liban 2023's independent, locally filmed and produced dark comedy. This film is centered on an English professor's tenure aspiration. The film opens with Professor of English Dr. Jim Bowden, Timothy McCracken, standing in fixed anticipation or possibly apprehension before the gilded, antiquated dark wood door of academia. The dark door is penetrated by a blinding light that overtakes Jim as it falls to the floor beneath him, revealing a few individuals on the other side who appear to await his arrival. Jim sits up suddenly in bed, waking from this anxious dream. His wife reassures him, tells him to get some rest, but Jim is nervous as it is his first day of teaching at his new tenure-track position at Sales College. He tells his wife he must leave early for a meeting with the dean. He dresses himself nicely. Before leaving the house, his young daughter, Amy Bowden, Bonnie Utter, encouraging her father, pipes, "I hope you get 10 years." To which Dr. Bowden replies, "Tenure. It's tenure," comically foreshadowing the perils to come. Dr. Bowden's meeting with Dean Richard Crawley, James Shanklin, is comically tense, introducing the tension between the two men, the film's antagonists, and between Jim's goal to reach tenure and its accomplishment. Dean Crawley frankly tells Jim that he doesn't approve of tenure, and it is something that must be earned through a probationary period. Jim quips to the dean, "Probation? Will I get an ankle bracelet?" The dean, with a steely stare, informs Jim that probation is good. It lets us know if you're worthy. Are you worthy, Jim? Right away, we know that Jim's tenure aspiration will be an uphill battle, to say the least. And clearly the protagonist's challenge. The story is moved forward 7 years with a literary reference to Kurt Vonnegut and time travel, as Jim prepares to appeal to the department for his tenure at long last. As Jim walks across campus toward his classroom, his daughter Amy, now a college co-ed in the film department, meets up with him to offer encouragement. They are also met with Amy's boyfriend and fellow film maker or student filmmaker Alex Delmonico, played by Nick James. The scene reveals that Alex is somewhat thoughtless of a partner to Amy, as she has to badger him to help her carry heavy equipment, and he's not well liked by her father, Dr. Bowden. Alex is not even able to pronounce Dr. Bowden's name properly, something we may have in common here. I'm not sure I'm getting it right, but he's corrected by Dr. Bowden, and it's clear that it's annoying to Dr. Bowden, which would not be a problem except that Amy is his girlfriend. Jim, or Dr. Bowden's, perception of the little things that make people's character questionable is registered by these brilliantly subtle facial expressions throughout the film. It's clear that Dr. Bowden is simply over the nonsense of this world, but he's also held by its standards. As he prepares for a class, he calls the dean's secretary, Emily, played by Katie Mitchells, to ask for a bit of leniency in getting his dossier of materials to the review board. Emily tells him that he should not end class early, nor should he turn his materials in late, as the dean, quote, won't like it. Being left in this pressured double bind, he rushes to class only to be met by a female student, Mia Pierce, Caitlin Miller, ironically requesting a deadline extension for her paper. He declines the student, asking her if she knows, quote, the meaning of a deadline. She then asks rather suggestively if there is anything I can do to change your mind. Anything at all? His only answer is that the load he is carrying is heavy, so she opens the door for him. Her boyfriend, Derek Mahoney, played by Caleb Liban, is standing there, and he reminds her that I'm right here, and asks her why she's behaving this way. Why are you behaving this way? She kind of coldly tells him to get over himself and proceeds to further appeal to Jim for the paper extension, which he further declines, telling her he's in a hurry, so email him. As Jim frantically loads his dossier material into his car and backs out to leave, he hears a thump, then another as he moves forward. What the hell? He asks out loud while getting out of the car to investigate. He discovers that he has, in fact, hit and done bodily injury to his student, Derek. Instead of calling EMS and waiting for assistance, he allows his ambition to get the better of his judgment. He loads Derek into the trunk of his car, promising him that he will get him to the hospital, but first, just a quick stop. The barriers to obtaining tenure have just gotten higher, and Jim's tension is palpable. He arrives with his materials only to be asked, "Do you know the meaning of a deadline?" The irony is piling up in the narrative, and this actor plays them masterfully. Believing his victim to still be alive, he rushes to his car to get Derek to a hospital for care, but as he checks on him, discovers that he has tragically died in the few precious minutes spared to secure his tenure. He has an emotional outburst, screaming, "Why today?" and punching a brick wall in frustration of his well-planned career goals and presumably frustration with his own moral choices. But the next shot shows us a deadpanned Jim shopping for a shovel. He runs into his daughter's boyfriend, Alex, while at the hardware store. Alex is shopping for film equipment, and then sees Alex, his daughter's boyfriend, and Mia, the female who's bothering him for a deadline, in a car together, making out as he leaves. So just click that off. Anyway, as Dr. Bowden drives to a secluded spot to bury the evidence of his dreadful mishap, Derek appears beside him in the front seat, an apparition of guilt with whom he calmly speaks and rationalizes his cold behavior. "You don't know the pressure I've been under," is his answer to Derek when he is reminded that Derek, too, had goals, ambitions, a family. As he drags and buries the body, he mutters to himself about the joys and virtues of academic life and tenure, now tainted with untimely death and egregious actions to hide his part in it, obviously by waiting to get Derek to the hospital. Once done with the dark deed, Derek takes himself to a thrift store named Last Chance for clothes to replace those tainted, like his aspirations and hopefully conscience, with the blood of an innocent co-ed. His next step is to replace the bloodied tires of his vehicle. He purchases junkyard tires as he purchased thrift store clothes to replace the clothes and wheels of the man who had his future ahead of him in good order. Now he wears others' handoffs and drives old tires that ultimately do not work. Every step he takes to rid himself of the evidence of his crime reveals not only his psychic chaos, but leaves potential breadcrumbs for the detective who will investigate the disappearance of Derek and later Mia. Returning home at last, his wife Allison, Anastasia Davidson, and daughter Amy are excited to see him but shocked at his appearance and demeanor. He excuses himself to take a shower. In the shower, he's hooting and hollering and having fits of conscience, I believe. And the daughter asks, maybe he's high? And the wife, hearing all of this, concedes maybe he is high. When Jim returns to work, he is summoned to a meeting with the dean. The student who was refused a new deadline for her paper, Mia, has brought false allegations of sexual misconduct against him, which he vehemently denies. And here in the film, and I don't want to talk too much about it, but we can see some playfulness with the whole Me Too thing and the back and forth on believing women, not believing all women. So the filmmaker plays with this a little bit. I think that I think it's fine because this is a dark comedy. This is a funny fucking movie, and so he can play with this. I'm fine with it. I think it's it just adds a little bit of a little sinister edge from other people as well, and we'll get into it. Anyway, so Jim retorts once the dean tells him that an investigation must take place. Jim retorts with a comment to the dean that insinuates sexual misconduct between the dean and Emily, his secretary, and a Machiavellian plan to bond together against any, quote, false perceptions that the public may bring against them. This infuriates the dean, who kicks him out of the office. Before leaving, though, Jim tells his boss that his photography work, which he has mounted in his office, is not art and just looks like dirt to him, while stealing his largest frame to hang above his own office desk. These photographs are, I would imagine, most certainly photos from the film's footage of the burial of Derek, one even including the shovel. And these I see as aspects in the mise-en-scène of foreshadowing and filmic self-reflexivity. And they're also, frankly, really nice photographs, in spite of Dr. Bowden's snobbish rejection of them. Images of dirt and soil may signify the unconscious, as well as relating to the image and buried meanings of the serpent. From Freud onward, the unconscious is known to be the repository of forbidden impulses and repressed emotions. The serpent in antiquity is a venerated symbol of the soul's ability to be reborn over and over again as the serpent sheds its skin. It also relates to Kundalini, etc., in yogic mythos. But in this regard, I think it may serve a less lofty signifier. Jim's unconscious recognition of his own corruption may be apparent in the photos and footage of the graphic burial of his victims. Again, played out in the mise-en-scène of the film. It's really clever. To be snake-like in modern parlance is a deep insult to the integrity and character of an individual, suggesting ruthlessness and immorality. The burial is a real event and may suggest Dr. Bowden's burial of his young, idealistic student self. When he is asked about Derek by the detective, he says he wasn't dedicated to English literature, perplexing the detective. Perhaps Dr. Bowden has figuratively, symbolically buried his own youthful aspirations that may not have been as pure as once believed, as the prospect of tenure and an esteemed academic career have eclipsed his dedication to the subject he teaches, English literature. As Jim becomes more unhinged in his defense against the allegations from Mia and his own guilt for the unconfessed homicide of Derek, he digs himself a deeper and deeper grave. His next actions come to him from viewing the art film created by Amy and Alex, in which Amy's breasts are exposed. He hacks into Dean Crowley's computer and forges a creepy email from him, the dean, to his daughter Amy. The email includes the footage of her bare breasts and a message fetishizing them. This sets Crowley up to be manipulated and blackmailed by Jim. Mia then shows up at Dr. Bowden's house to talk about a resolution to the allegations. Jim is changing his tires again and absurdly, accidentally, again, kills her by striking her head with the crowbar as it flies off the tire with great kinetic energy that he is unable to control. His whole life is out of control. His car, his ability to change a tire competently, meet deadlines. And this is part of the humor of the film's plot points and story, and it's an utterly absurd series of events that arise from the awkward contradictions between Dr. Jim Bowden's ideals and his aspirations. Philosopher and film theorist Henri Bergson talks a great deal about humor arising from the conflict between the ideal self, the human intelligence, and the vital impulses. and that's where he saw a lot of the humor in Charlie Chaplin's films, etc. And I think there's a great deal of physical comedy in this film. It's really enjoyable. I do hope you will see it, but let's carry on. After burying Mia, Jim is sitting in the dark drinking whiskey alone while the extra diegetic song playing. The song lyrics play throughout the scene, strongly indicating Jim's inner dialogue, which is, "I'm fucked, fuck me, I'm fucked." His wife enters unexpectedly and asks why he is sitting in the dark like, quote, some serial killer. Jim knows he is likely, quote, fucked in terms of his tenure and potentially as a convicted, well, serial killer. In his office again, Jim gives Mia's backpack to Alex, asking him to return it to her as, quote, she must be sick. She's not been in class. This deflects any suspicion that Jim may know of Mia's whereabouts or anything of her disappearance, which is now being investigated alongside the disappearance of Derek. It's also a cunning act of retribution for Alex's cheating on his daughter, as it will set Alex up as a suspect. The email hack worked to set the dean up as a sexual predator, resulting in his suspension from the college. The dean learns of the expulsion from his colleagues at the review for Jim's tenure. His reaction is to loudly protest, "You can't suspend me. I'm the dean." Though to no avail. He is now out and understandably enraged. Alex and Jim are brought in for questioning to the law enforcement, and as the investigation heats up, the savvy detective is piecing together evidence and questioning the emotional motivations of Dr. Jim Bauer. Jim tells the detective he is under stress from undergoing his tenure review. It's not something he, the detective, would understand. The detective retorts, "My wife is tenured." Jim asks the detective what his wife teaches, and when he replies, "Chemistry," Jim nods and says, "Oh, yes, science. Science is easy, as long as you're productive. In the humanities, I write fiction." For anyone who has spent time in school, worked to obtain a degree of any kind in any area of the humanities, the pathos of this is not lost. There is a real devaluation of the humanities in our culture and economy. And the film plays with this. It's a delight. So Jim returns to campus, but is confronted by Dean Crawley in the parking lot stairwell. The dean pulls a gun on Jim, attempting to force an admission of his culpability in the email. An argument ensues regarding the, quote, worth of humanities faculty, and the dean's utter contempt for faculty are expressed without censure or remorse. He shoots Jim in the shoulder, and as he stands over him to finish the job, Jim lands a swift kick to the dean's groin, causing Crawley to drop the gun. Jim obtains the gun and fires his shot directly into his forehead. Thus, Dr. Jim Bowden, professor of humanities, delivers a mortal wound to the, quote, head of the department at Sales College. The conflict between admin and faculty is real, and it's too bad, because school is like this great thing that should be there for all of us. But anyway, tenure's a sticky subject, and this film just plays with it so wonderfully. Let me get back to it. Again, absurdly, there are no consequences or criminal charges for Jim. Instead, Alex is charged for the murder of Mia and Dexter in an alleged, quote, lover's triangle crime of passion. Jim learns he has been given tenure from his colleague and steps outside to call his wife and daughter to tell them the great news. As he steps off the curb to make his way home, the dean's secretary / girlfriend, Emily, runs him over with her car, bringing the story full circle in its irony. It doesn't end there, though. The next scene returns us to the opening scene in which Jim awaits the demolition of the grand door, barring his entry into the heavenly halls of academia. The people awaiting him there are the victims of his gross negligence, bumbling embodiment, and starved ambition toward tenure. Derek, Mia, and Dean Crawley. Now, a permanent fixture on campus, Dean Crawley and Dr. Jim Bowden sit on the bench dedicated to Dr. Dean Bowden, locked in an eternal debate about the merits of tenure. "Are you worthy, Jim?" the dean taunts him. "I don't see your name on a bench around here," Jim replies. The two are eternal agonists, truly. A darkly comic metaphor for the endless rounds of contempt between administration and faculty that seethe beneath the clean sidewalks, brick buildings, and ivy walls of hallowed academia. So that's what I have to say about this movie. It's really delightful. There were a few loose ends that I thought possibly could have pointed toward an alternative ending that the writer had in mind. I would have to ask the writer if that is the case. Some things with the shovel and the guy at the hardware store, the guy from whom he buys tires, just some things that could have set him up. Also, some of the foreshadowing that seemed to suggest he was going to end up serving time, but it worked out differently. And I think that often happens with stories. Stories become their own thing, and they follow their own trajectory and sort of pathway to resolution. That would be my only quasi criticism. I thought it was beautifully shot. It looks so professional, and I really hope this filmmaker makes more local movies. And I may try to see if it would be even remotely possible to set up an interview with him or some of the cast or both. So let me know in the comments if you've had a chance to see the film. It's on Amazon Prime. I will see if I can link something down there, but we all know how to use our remote to find Amazon Prime and summon Publish or Perish by David Liban 2023, a dark comedy about the perils of tenure and aspiration. I really, really thank you for being here with me and listening all the way through my little video essay. It's my first little video essay. And I just really hope that you'll find the movie, watch it, and tell me what you think. Let's talk about the movie in the comments. Thank you again for being here.